ye se mona la tu sahwahate kham kar se mone chugyutan si pa.
The only difference is whether they got the opportunity or not, right? And so along that, and now sort of, I know I guess time's up, in that I'm assuming it's up at this point. So as I mentioned to school, then after that I was also the president of engineering regulator. We're about 80,000 engineers, right? Again, first non-white, right? President of that. And so these are the kind of things, the reason why again I mentioned is that as somebody who grew up here, as somebody who was born here, as somebody who was raised here, you were able to go amongst the world, at least within the circles. It's not to say it's great or not, but that we can be amongst, equal to and amongst others in that circle, right?
Good morning, today. My name is Tsering Choedon, and my question to you is how did you come to the decision of becoming a cardiologist? Because, for example, I generally know that I want to become a doctor, but there are so many options of going. So, do you have any advice on which path I should pursue?
Well, I mean, I think like I was kind of mentioning, the big thing is getting into medical school, right? And then once you're in, you have some time. You have time to experience the different specialties and see where you fit within it. For me, it was, like I said, I thought family medicine, and then I was studying cardiology and I was learning about it, and I just fell in love with it. It was fun to study, I'd be studying, and next thing you knew it was 11 p.m. And I was like, nothing, studying the kidney didn't bring me that joy. I kept looking at the clock, what time it was, but it was, you find that passion. And when you find that, often what I would do is I would call my parents and say, anytime I had something and it was cardiology was a thing that kept coming up as something that I enjoyed so much, and you could just, you can see that passion and that excitement. So I would say my advice would be not that one path is, once you get past the medical school, any path you pick is what is great, right? It's what fits for you, right? There's no one specialty that's gonna make you the best doctor or whatever, right? At that point, follow your passion. And even to become a doctor, follow your passion, right? If that's not what your passion is, there's many other options, and that are very good. So I think you don't need to go into medical school knowing I want to be this, right? Because if you do that, it closes so many doors. Or you don't also need to go through life right now being 17, 18, that I only want to be a doctor. Again, that closes a lot of doors as well, right? Seeing, okay, I like sciences, what are all the options that are available? Okay, out of all these options that I put a lot of thought into, the pros, the cons, I still pick medicine. Okay, then you pursue that, right? And then once you go into medicine, what I did was going through my rotations, I read lists of what I loved about the rotation, what I hated about the rotation, or what I liked about a specialty, what I hated, and I asked my attending physicians, what do you love about your job and what do you hate about your job, right? Because you can love, if you love medicine, you're gonna love lots of medicine. You have to figure out, okay, what can I not deal with? So I knew I didn't want to do obs-gyn, right? That's delivering babies, surgeries, or I didn't want to be a surgeon because
there is a stereotype going on, if you want to become a doctor, high score is very important. So which leads to immense stress to the students.
Oh yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, I think like you were saying, it's you can't really beat around that bush, right? It is very hard to get into medical school, right? It's not something that everyone gets into, right? So you do have to get really high grades there's not a whole lot you can work around that, right? You have to study hard, and these are hours that you have to want to dedicate and you have to be willing to dedicate, right? If you are passionate, that's amazing because it's so worth it, right? It's such a fulfilling job. Every time, even if you're stressed, you just feel you feel good, you're helping others, but it has to be something that you're willing to put the work into. But the end goal of knowing that by doing this, I get to be what I've always wanted to become, which is a doctor, and I get to do all this is what helps me or motivates me through those tough times.
One of
the main reasons Tibetans are not becoming doctor is because due to the high fees. So are there any scholarships in Canada medical colleges?
I mean, in terms of dermatology, I think, yeah, within medicine, like, it's always kind of the feat is, okay, I need to get into medical school, right? And then once you get into medical, like, you work hard, you do everything, you get into medical school. Now it's keeping an open mind, right? So knowing that you want to be a dermatologist, that you like dermatology, that's amazing, right? To know you have this passion. My biggest thing is always have an open mind, because then you'll see so many different specialties that you never knew about, right? When I went into medicine, I thought I wanted to be a family doctor, like my mom was, my Amla was, so that's what I always thought. And then I found internal medicine, and I did my cardiology block, and I just fell in love with the heart, but I never thought I'd become a cardiologist, right? So I think once you're in it, you find things that you realize, oh, I didn't even know I liked this. So I think it's important to keep an open mind, but I think if you are passionate about it, that's the most important thing. The minute you're passionate about something, then it becomes easy to kind of follow that path. In terms of scholarships, I'm not sure.
I can deal with passion, first of all. Here's actually, this reminds me, not directly answering your question, but on that particular issue, right, which is financing, financial ability. Now, what we found in Canada as we looked at Canadian students as well, amongst the immigrant kids and the established kids who are primarily white, is that families of lower income, poor families, typically immigrants, tend to not choose something where financial ability is seen as a barrier. I can't afford it, therefore, stage of life. It's not to say the white families are richer. It's just that they have a different way of thinking. That's an investment. They're not afraid to take loans, whereby your financial ability or not is not a barrier. So whenever they have student loans as such, what they quickly discover is that families of poor backgrounds do not access it because they think the debt that I will take by my education is greater than all the debt the families ever had. And so even before you get started, you don't even go into it. So that's one of the aspects you'll find, whereas you'll find that most of the mainstream, even the very rich ones, will take loan. Because there are advantages to taking loan as they go through, right? So this is a mentality I think we Tibetans, especially in exile, need to break. That if there's no scholarship, somehow it cannot continue school. That somehow it's somebody else's responsibility to pay for your education, right? That aspect of it, and I hear that so many times where promising students will say, well, I didn't get scholarship. Well, why is it anybody else's responsibility for your own education, right? We need to break that thing, because that's what holds us back.
Because you can get loans here.
You can get loans and you can get other means of getting that, right?
But there are scholarships.
No, they are, but I mean, the point is to them, this is the background, right? This is a bigger problem overall within the community. Or somebody will say, I've got 60%, therefore I'm entitled to a scholarship. Well, 60% doesn't matter anymore in India. Back in the day it did. Great inflation happened. Where cutoff at some of the Indian universities are 100% if you're not in the quota. Back in the day, highest mark might have been what, 60, 70%? Right. The passing grade at 33% or so has not changed. And so you have to be amongst the best, not measured by other states, right? So as to scholarships, there will be some here and there, but medicine, even with money, people are not even getting, right? So what happens is, if you look at this, and I follow this fairly closely with medicine, right? It costs over $100,000 if you're going to some private school, even in India, US, like over $100,000, be it Manipal or any of the other ones, right? Private universities. In fact, many of the Indians who could not afford medical schools in India, 20,000 of them go to Ukraine to get medical education. And so they're Indians going over. They go study in China, they go study elsewhere. And so for Tibetans, yes, it's still, I'm not sure what the numbers are, 5, 6, 7, whatever the numbers that are guaranteed through. You're incredibly privileged even for that number as it is, right, when you look at per quota. And so understand the value of it as you go through. And it's good to have the goals, but then do a reality check along the way as well, right? It doesn't mean you give up at that point. It just means I have to be even better. Not to put so much pressure on yourself. Becoming a doctor is not the end and be it all as well. There are many other ready options as you go along. Sometimes reality kicks in. I look at it when she was graduating, and in Canada, Bachelor of Science, Biological Science, is the path of students wanting to go to medicine. And they're almost all honorable. And I'm looking at this and saying, okay, so you're counting a few hundred students graduating. In fact, there's only about 50, 60 might of the medical school, your classmates, there are some who tried for 7 years. After 7 years, they finally get in and meet and they've got PhD. It requires perseverance. So I can't beat around the bush and say these are easy to get in, right? Because then you're not prepared. It's not to scare you either, but also to recognize the reality of it, right? Chances are many of you will, and many of you. In Canada, most have ability to get in, but they can't. And so they go to other countries to get it, right? So even with money, they can't. So as you go through it, and I'll be brutally honest as I say this, right, is that look at what you'll take. And it just means that as you don't have some of the options as you go through it, your grades are not the highest, if you don't have leadership skills, all of those, it just means there are more detours you'll require to get there if you work at it. So, sorry. Keep at it. She's also the chief resident. Now, the reason I mentioned that is important is we think, again, this lack of self-confidence, right, among our people often, because we haven't been around Indian invisible. And then as you go out, you'll be amongst Indians. Remember the stereotype we've always grown up with? As if somehow, and I think that's one of the bigger problems, and that comes from the fact that you don't have others to compare with as you go through. And you know what makes me incredibly proud as I see, and I follow through the results of students over the years. No, it's not true, but look at this as well. Women are majority, girls are majority. If you look at the top percentage girls, right? And look at the issue of the old generation of our community, where women were denied opportunity. Parents would take away kids, girls especially, pull away from school.
Nan so drop